One building, no windows, no sign, and it drinks more water than the neighborhood around it. It sits 1,000 feet from Beverly and Jeff Morris's house in Newton County, Georgia, and it runs day and night doing one thing: staying cool. To do that, it takes roughly 500,000 gallons of water a day, about a tenth of what the whole county uses. After it went up, their well water started running with sediment. Appliances died. A new well quotes at $25,000 and they can't pay it. Before we're done, I'll hand you one number that tells you whether any data center's water use is a real problem or a rounding error. One number, and it isn't gallons. File that away.
This is Kai, and 10% is where I stop. One customer, 1/10 of a county's water. Any other industry, a utility board loses their job.
Last episode, we followed the electricity and what it does to a grid and to your bill. Today, we follow the rest of the invoice: water, land, carbon, and the hardware nobody talks about at all.
I'm Erica, and the reason it drinks is the part nobody's been told. A chip takes in electricity and gives back heat. Cooling isn't a feature. It's most of what the building does.
Isabella here. Careful though, before anybody reaches for a villain. Because the villain version is the one that always gets shared, and it's almost never the one that's true. Newton County was already forecasting a water deficit by 2030, servers or no servers. The pipes were old before the concrete was poured. So the story isn't a monster moving in next door. It's a county that was already tight, a new customer that drinks like a small town, and a deal that was signed in a room the neighbors weren't invited to. All three of those things at the same time.
Yeah, every number today is published somewhere you can go and read it. Company reports, the International Energy Agency, peer-reviewed papers. Estimates get called estimates, out loud. Erica, you pulled what people actually type into a search bar. Put it in front of us.
Gladly. Does asking an AI a question really waste a bottle of water, or is that just something people repeat? Here's the short answer, and then we earn it. The water's real. The bottle is in the wrong place.
Cooling. That's the word Erica dropped a minute ago and walked straight past, and it decides everything else. Let's start there. Then we go find the 5 drops nobody believes, the farmland nobody mentions, and the one design choice that ends this argument.
"95% of the power a chip draws comes straight back out as heat. Which is why cooling is most of what a data center actually does.
All of it, Erica, not 95. Every watt. A chip is a space heater that happens to do math.
Fair. All of it. The building's real job is moving heat, not moving thoughts.
Okay, so why water? Air is free.
Water carries far more heat per pound than air does. So the heat goes into water first, and the water carries it out of the room.
Follow it. Hot water leaves the servers and gets pushed out to a cooling tower on the roof. There it gets sprayed out thin, and some of it boils off. That boiling is the trick. That is how the heat actually leaves the building.
Watch where it goes. That steam is gone. You don't get it back. You top the loop up from the city's supply.
The white plume over a cooling tower isn't smoke, it's the water. Leaving.
The AI stack, layer 5, the hardware. Every chat message you send runs through a physical machine that has to put its heat somewhere, and somewhere is usually a river's worth of somebody's water.
Let's get this from someone who knows cooling systems cold, because I don't want us guessing at it. Ingrid Ferreira, are you with us?
I'm here. And hold on, because the question you asked is the wrong one. It isn't how much water a data center uses. It's whether it evaporates that water or borrows it. Those are 2 completely different bills.
Borrows it how?
A closed loop takes one fill at setup and then recirculates the same water forever. An evaporative tower keeps consuming it. Every hour it runs. Same chips, same heat. And the reason nearly everyone still picks the tower is that it's...
Then why doesn't everyone close the loop?
Because evaporation does the cooling for free. Take it away and you run mechanical chillers instead, and your power bill goes up. Water down, electricity up. That is the trade every single time.
Okay, that one lands.
Thermal design, I know cold. What one county's aquifer can actually take is a different animal, and I'd want a hydrologist in that chair, not me. So that's the short version.
Clearest anyone has ever made that for me. Anything you want to leave the room with before we let you go?
Only this, and then I'll get out of your way. Nobody in this industry is hiding the water. They're just not asked for the ratio. Ask for the ratio. Thanks for having me on.
700,000 liters. That is what one training run for the model behind the first big chatbot boom is estimated to have evaporated. One model. One run. One thing before the next part, and then we move right on. If any of this is clicking, tap that like, hit subscribe, and ring the bell for the next one. It takes a second, it costs nothing, and it helps more than you would think.
Erica, you pulled the actual papers. Is that 700,000 litre figure real, or is it a number people just pass around?
Real and estimated, both at once. A 2023 paper, Making AI Less Thirsty. The authors call it an estimate themselves. Somebody publishes a method, then everyone argues about the boundary. Nearly every number here has that shape.
Okay, and the way the water gets counted, forget the formula for a second. Start with the boundary, because the fight isn't about arithmetic. It's about where you draw the line around the machine before Kai runs anything. One prompt, one question typed into a chatbot. Over or under a shot glass of water? Erica, commit.
Over. It has to be over. Every headline I have read for 2 years says a bottle, so a shot glass feels conservative.
Wrong. Not by a little. Google published the measurement for its own median Gemini prompt. 0.26 milliliters. 5 drops. Run it out. Say you're a heavy user. 20 prompts a day, every day, and I'm being generous.
20 a day is generous. Keep going.
20 prompts times 5 drops is about 5 milliliters a day, a teaspoon, times 365 days, 1.9 liters. A year of your chatting is one big bottle, the worth it number, and it isn't the crisis.
The version going around where every question you ask drains a water bottle? Half true at best. Busted, but I admire the confidence.
Busted, but be precise about how. That bottle was real. It was the water for a whole conversation, 20 to 50 questions, on a model from 2023. Somewhere along the way, it got repeated as one question, today. That's a per conversation number wearing a per prompt hat.
Which number, though? There are 2 on that page. Withdrawn or consumed?
Consumed. 8.1 billion gallons, Google's data centers, 2024, their own report. Up 28% in a year. They replenished about 64% of their freshwater consumption, which is real and is also not 100. The full table runs site by site for pages. We'll pin the report so you can check us. So hold on to this. Withdrawn is borrowed, consumed is gone.
And one more thing has to go on this ledger, or we're being unfair. That old bottle number is stale for a second reason, and it's the strongest thing the industry can say for itself. Over 12 months, Google's own median prompt dropped 33 times in energy and 44 times in carbon. Not 33%, 33 times.
So any per prompt figure we quote, including ours, has a shelf life. The engineers really are making each answer cheaper, fast, and we are asking for a great many more answers. That is the whole fight in one sentence.
And this is what it looks like when the heat actually leaves. Coils and fans on a roof, moving a building's worth of warmth into the sky. Nobody films it, nobody puts it in the keynote. There's no launch event for a fan. But every clever thing you have ever watched a model do, every essay it wrote at 2 a.m, every picture it made of a cat in a spacesuit, left the building through a box like that one, as warm air, into somebody's sky, over somebody's town, on a street with a name and a school on it. That's the consequence, and it has an address.
Kai, straight answer. Is my chatting the problem here?
No, your year of prompts is under 2 liters.
The fleet, the boundary, the place. 3 different things, and nobody says which one they mean. Oh, and water isn't even the biggest thing a campus takes. We'll come back to that before this video ends.
Land. That's the word you just walked past, Erica. And it decides where every one of these buildings goes.
$274.5 million gallons. That's what Google's data centers in the Dalles, Oregon used in 1 year, and the city fought a public records case to keep it quiet. It was more than a quarter of everything that city drinks.
More than a quarter of a city. And the city was in court defending the secrecy, not the water.
The pattern starts before the concrete. Cheap power first, cheap land second, tax deals third. Water shows up near the bottom of the list, if it's on the list at all. Cheap power and cheap land live in dry, empty, sunny places. Arizona, West Texas, inland Spain. The best map for a data center is the worst map for water, not malice, just what the ranking produces.
The official phrase for that is water stress. What does that actually mean for a family?
Honestly, forget the official phrase. The plain version is how thirsty the place already was before the servers showed up. In Newton County, Georgia, the answer was already fairly thirsty. Here's the case, and I'll mark how much weight it holds. The New York Times reported it last summer. Beverly and Jeff Morris, 1,000 feet from the site. Their well ran with sediment. A new one quotes at $25,000.
Wait, did anybody actually test the well? Or is this a timeline and a feeling?
Good, and here's the honest answer. The company commissioned a well study on that property and called it unlikely their site touched the groundwater. I can't tell you they're wrong. I can tell you the part nobody disputes.
And here the sourcing matters. A site that size typically runs about 500,000 gallons a day. That is a reporter's typical, not a filing. What is on the record is the County Water Authority's own figure, roughly 1/10 of county usage. And the county's own forecast has it in deficit by 2030. The well is contested. The arithmetic isn't.
Take the boring version. Nobody has to be a villain. Add a customer the size of a small town to a system that was already short, then act surprised when…
Stop right there. Land is my lane and it's bigger than the water. So this is the thing I said we'd come back to, and here it is. In Richland Parish, Louisiana, between 2 little towns called Rayville and Delhi, there was a place on the maps called the Franklin Farm Megasite. 2,250 acres. Farmland, with a farm's name still on the paperwork. It is now the footprint of the largest data center that company has ever built, more than 4 million square feet of it. And the concrete started going down before most of the parish had ever heard the word Hyperion said out loud. They kept the name of the farm. That's the part I can't stop turning over.
2,250 acres, 640 to a square mile, so 3.5 square miles of farmland gone.
Gone, and paid for, and legal, and wanted by a lot of people there who need the work. All of that is true at once. That's the consequence.
The one the studio floor keeps typing at me, and I've ducked it long enough. If the county was already short on water, is it fair to blame the data center?
No and yes, and the order matters. Here's the ruling. Blame is the wrong tool. The county was short, the data center didn't cause that. But it bought the last of the slack, and it's the only party in the room with money to fix the pipes. Not blame, a bill.
One question decides whether any of this is actually a crisis, and I want it answered cold. Is AI's carbon bigger than aviation, or small enough to be a rounding error?
Smaller, much smaller than aviation, and it isn't close. Data centers run about 0.5% of global carbon dioxide today. Whole answer. Now let me ruin it for you.
Please. 0.5% sounds like nothing, and the room I keep sitting in says the sky is falling. Slowly then, because the shape is the story and the level isn't. In 2024, the world's data centers used around 415 terawatt-hours of electricity, which is just over 1% of all the power on Earth. The International Energy Agency projects that more than doubles by 2030 to roughly 945 terawatt-hours. That is about what Japan burns in a year. Emissions follow it up from 0.5% to around 1%, or 1.4 if the build-out runs hot. That's the honest curve, not a rounding error, not the end of the world, just a line going up faster than the thing it's drawn on.
Doubling is the story, not the level.
60% of the electricity these buildings run on is still fossil, and there's where the emissions come from. I mean, most of them, for the sites that never bought clean power.
So it's a grid number wearing a computer's coat. The servers get blamed for a decision a power company made 20 years ago in a hearing nobody went to, about a plant nobody wanted to think about.
Doom spirals start right here. Run the fast scenario, assume the grid stays dirty, assume every projection is the low one.
And you assume the chatbots keep multiplying, and the robots get chatbots, and every fridge in Europe starts asking questions, and the rivers.
0.5%.
Say the rest of it.
Today, the level today, everything you two just built is a forecast standing on a forecast.
He's right, and there's the discipline. 0.5% today, 1% coming, with a real range around it. The IEA's central projection for 2030 is about 945 terawatt-hours, roughly Japan's entire electricity demand today, and they publish it as a scenario, not a promise. One number with no range around it is a sales pitch.
Make it real, though. One person, not a fleet, not a forecast. A woman who uses this thing every day for work. What is her actual carbon?
0.03 of a gram per prompt. 20 a day, a year of it. About 220 grams.
200 grams of what, though? Give me the thing. Give me the thing I can picture.
0.5 mile of driving. Her whole year of AI is 0.5 mile in a car.
That number should make you suspicious of me, not comfortable. If your share is 0.5 mile of driving, the rest is happening where you can't see it. The fleet, the grid, and, to borrow Erica's phrase, how thirsty the place already was.
And if you're half listening to this in the car right now, here's the one number to keep. 0.5% today, roughly 1% by 2030. Everything else in the argument is about who pays for the doubling.
One bill nobody has put on this table: the machines themselves. Every rack in that Louisiana campus is on a 5-year clock, and when it runs out, it doesn't retire. It goes somewhere.
Somewhere. 3 to 5 years is the whole working life of an AI accelerator, and then it is scrap with a serial number.
Okay, so put a number on the pile. How much hardware are we actually talking about?
500,000 tons by 2030, tops. It's servers, not fridges.
1.2 to 5 million. Not 500,000. 10 times your guess.
10 times? Then I want it in writing.
Read me the actual line, not the summary, the line.
From the paper, Nature Computational Science, 2024. Generative AI, I could create 1.2 to 5 million tons of electronic waste between 2020 and 2030. 4 adoption scenarios. The spread is the range.
I'm leaning in for this one. 10 times isn't a rounding error on my part. It's a whole missing category.
2,250 acres of it, and every rack on that land is on the same 5-year clock.
And read that range properly because it is cumulative, not yearly. 1.2 to 5 million tons total across the whole decade. Which brings me to the part I have to concede. You're right that we recycle more than we used to. Gold and copper are worth money, so gear gets resold. Real point. Here's the sharper question. If it's this recyclable, why can the same paper find a saving that big on the floor? Hold on, why is it even called e-waste? It isn't waste. Every gram of it was mined.
It's called waste because the accounting is written by whoever throws it away. Nobody names a category after the person who has to live beside it. Ask whoever ends up living beside the pile what they would call it, and it would not be waste.
Great sentence, and we are 2 minutes from the end of the, okay, forget the etymology, the number.
Anyway, 1.2 to 5 million tons. Live number. Put it in the ledger.
16 to 86% on the paper's own numbers is what reuse and repair could cut, depending how hard you push it. I do my thinking on long walks, and I've walked this one a lot. No invention is missing. The chips can be recovered. It just isn't required of anyone, so mostly it isn't done. That settles it.
Softest line on the whole invoice, and the least measured. Water, land, carbon, hardware. 4 bills, 1 machine.
And 1 ledger.
Okay, different animal entirely, and it's the one the comments actually fight about. The question that splits this room: should every data center be forced to go zero water? Kai says close every loop and eat the cost. Isabella says that trade is worse than it looks. Kay make the case.
Close the loop everywhere. One fill at setup, recirculate forever, and a site that was evaporating 100 million liters a year evaporates nothing. Not theoretical either. Microsoft's own arithmetic. More than 125 million liters a year avoided per data center. Their number, not mine.
Careful, you moved the cost, you didn't delete it. Evaporation was doing the cooling for free. Take it away and you run chillers, and chillers run on the grid, and the grid is 60% fossil. So you've taken a water problem, which is local and visible and fixable and has a county commissioner you can shout at, and turned it into a carbon problem, which is global and invisible and belongs to nobody. That's not a solution. That's a laundering operation for a cost.
Hold it there. Neither of you has touched the case where the water is genuinely free. Ireland, Iceland, a river town in Norway. What happens to your rule there?
Then the rule costs you power for nothing. Fine, that one's real.
That's the consequence of a universal rule. It has to be wrong somewhere, and it is wrong exactly where the water was never scarce. Meanwhile, the same design in Odense sends its waste heat into the city's district heating and warms more than 12,000 homes. That's not a loophole. That's a data center paying rent.
Kai, that's her strongest card. The heat goes somewhere useful, and the water was never the constraint. Hit that one head on, not around it.
Then bolt my rule to the map. Zero water where water is stressed. Evaporate where it isn't. Publish the ratio either way.
So you've stopped arguing for a universal rule.
I've narrowed it. The citing piece moves me. The disclosure piece doesn't, because nobody's told me who forces them to publish anything. And until somebody does, every number here is...
Wait, who does make them publish it? Is anyone actually forced to?
In the States, nobody. In Europe, it's different, and that's her file, not mine.
Which Europe are you asking about, though? Because that changes the answer completely. The EU, or a single country's own rules?
The EU, the block-wide one.
Then yes, and it's newer than most people realize. Under the Energy Efficiency Directive, any data center with at least 500 kilowatts of IT power has to report to a European database every year. Total water consumption, drinking water consumption, power usage effectiveness, water usage effectiveness, energy reuse. It is not a press release. It is a filing.
Bottom line then, if a company reports its water number, we can trust it?
No, you can check it. Those are different words, and the second one is the one that's worth anything.
Fair. I'll take that correction. Kai, one number. Then we land this. When exactly is evaporative cooling indefensible?
When the ratio is above zero and the basin is stressed. Microsoft's fleet averaged 0.3 liters per kilowatt hour. So, times 100 megawatt site times 8,760 hours, call it 260 million liters a year. Order of magnitude, not to the liter.
260 million liters. One site, 1 year.
And no, before anybody asks, the oceans still aren't boiling. 0.5%. I'm never living that down.
This is where I land, and it's the number I held back at the top. The question was never how much water AI uses. That one has no answer. The right question is what ratio this site runs and where it takes the water from. And the ratio has a name. Water usage effectiveness. Liters per kilowatt hour.
The worth it number. Everything else is a mood.
Microsoft's fleet ran 0.3 last year, and their new closed-loop sites run 0. Google publishes its consumption and its replenishment. The EU now forces the filing, my verdict, and who each path fits. 0 water where the basin is stressed, and yes, you pay for it in power. Evaporate where water is plentiful, and sell the heat to the town the way Odense does. Demand the ratio in both, and the smart play if you do one thing. Ask your county for that number before the tax deal is signed. Walk out with one rule. Ask for the ratio before the deal is signed, not after. And that is what this costs when the water is scarce. Wait until you see what it costs when the electricity is the thing that runs out. Before I run it back, try to say the one number that actually matters to you. Got it? Here's mine. 5 drops a prompt, 8.1 billion gallons of fleet, and the whole argument lives in the gap between those two.
Next time we go one layer down to the thing all this water is cooling. One company makes the chips almost everybody's AI runs on. The strange part isn't the chip. It's how they got to decide who gets one.
Here's what you can do with this tonight. Next time someone hands you a scary water number, ask them one thing. Which boundary did you count? If they can't answer, they don't have a number. They have a mood, and now you can tell the difference.
I'm still not over Kai being off by 10 times on the e-waste and just saying so, flat. One sentence.
For the record, a universal 0 water rule is still the wrong tool. Kai narrowed it. My answer hasn't moved.
If this made the water story clearer instead of louder, hit subscribe. Simple trade. You give us 25 minutes, we hand you the numbers with the sources attached. And a like pushes it at the people arguing about this right now with no numbers at all. One we genuinely could not settle in here, so I'm putting it to you. Would you accept a data center in your county if it paid to fix the water system first? Go on, tell me. That is the invoice. 4 lines, sources on the table. Thanks for sitting through the arithmetic with us. See you in the next one. Screenshot the claim, then check the claim.
Rating you an 8.7, Tiffany. Held back a hair because you made it look easy. This is Professor Erica. Thanks for watching and signing off.